that they're supposed to really consider whether or not they should evict this family, as instead of just can they. Sometimes before you'd have problems, housing authorities saying, well, we can evict the person, so let's do it. What they're supposed to do is say, okay, can we evict this person? Do they violate or whatnot? And then should we, once their situation, let's review these certain issues. They'll look at it for like a household, how it affects all the household members. Is there an alternative to eviction? One common thing that I would look for is if there's one offending household member and it's clear that person can't stay, maybe finding alternate housing arrangements for that one family member. It could also be, in some cases, that it was a guest or something like that. And sometimes they might agree that that guest will not be invited back, or that guest will not be a guest anymore at the property due to that violation. So there are ways to try to work something out. And the reason I tell you that too is to don't be afraid. Be aware if you're talking to the housing authority that what you say, they can testify to that at some point. But just be aware and don't be afraid to talk to the housing authority, your landlord, the property manager, about trying to figure out, is there something you can do if you're accused of something, or if a guest is accused of something, to try to work things out or try to avoid that whole process. And it's important, to remember, I have a lot of tenants, whether it's public housing, not public housing, where they don't feel like they can talk to their landlord, and there are some things that probably could have been avoided if they were just able to have that conversation. So keep that in mind. That's also something to bring up at the informal meeting or hearing, if you have a grievance hearing, is to say, well, can't we do this or that if this person was the offending party, they're a guest or whatnot. And that's why it's important to really look at all the information and to see what their policy is. I'm not surprised, and I have had it where a housing authority was not aware of what their own policy was relating to a particular part, or they might have a different understanding of that policy. So don't be afraid to talk about it with the property manager and see if you can get something resolved before you go down that process. It's not a fun process to go down. There's a lot of uncertainty, and if you lose your public housing, then that can be a problem to get back on the public housing, and it can take you some years before you're allowed to get back on public housing or any other subsidized housing. So that's something to keep in mind as well.